Century, yeah. Well, there's a few others as well, but Century is really important, and we've only disclosed some of it in the sort of last week or so. A covert infiltration operation that was mounted by Essex Police. What the idea of it was that they would get 2 RUC fully trained undercover officers to call Michael Steele, and in the course of a conversation they would pretend to be an active IRA cell, and they were basically saying, or did say, and the plan was to say to Michael Steele, we are the IRA. We were in business with Pat Tate before he died. He owes us money, £40,000 for a drug deal. The insinuation was that you killed Tate, Tucker and Rolfe, therefore you owe us the money, or you need to tell us where to get the money from. That was the plan, that was their cunning plan. They sat down on the 19th of January 1996, the most senior cops in Essex, all the top detectives and the assistant chief constables all got together, and they agreed that's what they were going to do. Dibley allegedly come up with the idea, and it was run by George Florence. They went out to Belfast. They worked with 2 undercover detectives who we know their identities, Billy and John, and they made phone calls from a telephone kiosk in the right area of Belfast to Michael Steele. So these series of phone calls to Michael Steele to try and build this case. Unfortunately for them, Mickey Steele didn't go for it and thought they were probably police officers playing that game. Where it all goes wrong for them is that on the last occasion, one of the detectives gets drunk and goes off to the phone box and basically threatens to kill Mick Steele, threatens to blow him up. There's been a bomb gone off just days before, the Docklands bomb, which he refers to, and he basically threatens to blow up, threatens to kill Michael Steele. You don't know who we are, we've got A-levels in whacking people, I think he says. So they've gone well beyond any authority they would have been granted. You can't commit criminal offences like that, and clearly that's threats to kill, threats to cause criminal damage, threats to cause explosions, all sorts of criminal offences have been committed by them. As a result of which, we've been told by the officer who was there with them that they destroyed the recordings. They actually destroyed the evidence, which in itself is perverting the course of justice. So they covered it up from day one. Immediately afterwards, because of the criminal offences committed, Essex Police had to close the investigation down, completely flawed investigation, and then there's this massive cover-up by senior Essex detectives to cover up Century. Century does come out in the trial, but not the truth about what really went on, and it's quite clear that there were complaints flying around all over the place about what had gone on with Century, even to MPs, Kate Hoey, Paul Boateng, and it's quite clear that Essex Police, senior cops in Essex Police, lied to those MPs, lied to the Home Office about everything. And the biggest lie that has never come out before, that we now know is true, is that they never disclosed that as well as calling Michael Steele, they called Sarah Saunders. Sarah Saunders was obviously the former partner of Pat Tate, had his child. She, by this time, had moved on. She was a complete innocent in everything. She was living with a new partner in that partner's flat in Hutton. And what we now know is that Essex Police burgled her flat, broke into her flat without her knowing. They placed a listening device into her sofa, and they were then listening to and recording conversations that were taking place in her flat. The RUC undercover officers also called Sarah Saunders and threatened her. Now the idea was that may generate conversation with Sarah Saunders about the murders and potentially call Mick Steele, and there'd be some sort of evidence gathered. The reality was all they recorded was criminal behaviour on behalf of the two undercover officers. But that's never come out, never been disclosed, been hidden, massive disclosure, lack of disclosure, failure in disclosure. So Operation Sentry in itself, if you just took Operation Sentry, it blows the whole case out of the water through lack of disclosure. Then you put in Grenadier that's never been disclosed, you then put in Apache that's never been disclosed, all this massive corruption. And then it goes a bit further because you then got another officer who was under investigation by the Mets, CIB3, the Untouchables as they were at the time. They bugged his car, they bugged the office, they were clearly listening to telephone calls. Again, that was a huge corruption investigation around that particular detective sergeant. Again, on the murder squad, same murder squad, linked to the Beauchelle investigation as well. And someone got sacked as a result of that. Not that particular officer, but he was resigned. So you've got that corruption around there as well that nobody knows about. That's never been disclosed. It's completely hidden as well. You've got another officer on the murder squad who had gone on a misconduct board and been sacked, that was involved and linked to the two police officers' houses that got burnt down, linked to organised crime. So what you've got is this cesspit of corruption and dishonesty within that murder squad, and none of it has ever been disclosed. And the fact is that we have tried to talk to the Essex Chief Constable, who we understand is a decent bloke. He doesn't want to talk to us. Now, you would have hoped that he'd have sat down for an hour or two and just listened to what we've got to say. Doesn't want to listen. Someone is sitting there. You've still got people serving in Essex Police as civilians, in civilian roles, who were originally police officers involved in the corruption and the murder investigations. In our opinion, they're sitting there with their hands on the cookie, on the jar of poison, holding the lid tightly on at the moment. At some stage, the lid's going to come off and the poison's going to pour out. And so, all of this corruption stuff, if you put it all together, it would blow the whole case out of the water.
Yeah, there's so much there, just what you've said, without piecing the rest of the puzzle together, just to tell me alone that something's not right there.
There's a horrendous smell. we wrote to the IOPC very recently, raising our concerns with the IOPC, and IOPC aren't interested either. You couldn't make up. All the state-based agencies, the CCRC, IOPC, the police service, all they want to do is bury it. Because the impact of this is significant. There are a number of other major cases in Essex that if one of these cases fell over, it would be like dominoes. They'd all fall over because you've got the same senior officers with the same allegations across all of these various cases. Darren Pearman, Ronnie Fuller, Lubbock, you've got the Bamber case, you've got Lee Balkwall, and so on and so on and so on. All of these cases are all linked to the same police officers, and so the potential is if one falls over, they all fall over.
Do you think Essex Police would want that hidden because of the embarrassment or the shame it'd look at on that force?
Yeah, but we're in a new world now.
Yeah, times have moved on.
It's a new world now, and in reality, at this time, you've seen what's happened in the Met. At this time, you would hope that any senior cop would want to get a grip of this, and the thing to do is to come in and deal with it, cut the cancer out, deal with the cancer, and get on. Yeah. But at the moment, the cancer still exists, and it's all, everything we're looking at is linked to organised crime, serious organised crime, police corruption, and there's this flavour of the Masons all sitting around it as well.
Amazing. I'll move on to the next question, David. Your review report was submitted to the Criminal Case Review Commission in September 2023. What happens next?
I'll leave that to Albert.
Good question. It's in limbo land at the moment. We're waiting for a date to be told either, yes, this is what we're going to be doing, or invite us along to raise our concerns. But I noticed on social media just a couple of days ago, a demonstration is going to take place outside the Criminal Cases Review Commission offices in Birmingham on Friday the 10th of May 2024 at 2 p.m. We won't be there, but guess what? I'll just share with you now the issues that this other person has within the concerns around the country of people being convicted and they're innocent. And this is the view of the CCRC. Unacceptable time it takes for the CCRC to review the evidence. 1. 2. Employees who are ex-police officers. 3. Refusal to obtain relevant disclosure. 4. Forensic work not commissioned or funded. 5. Clients face radio silence on promised updates. Our radio is silent as well. And finally, unjust refusals to refer to the Court of Appeal. We're suffering, we sense, when I say we, myself and David, can I just point out, I'm nothing to do with TMI. I'm a totally innocent, all-bill review officer who, because of COVID, got involved in this case thinking it would last a couple of months to a year. And here we are 4 years down the road, and it's going to be another 4 years before this goes anywhere, is my gut feeling. And Michael still will die in prison, an innocent man. Next question, Lee.
Yeah.
Can I just go over
Yeah,
very quickly? Just one of the important things that I've sort of raised very recently is our concerns around Barrington. Right. So Mr. Barrington was at the CCRC. After leaving Essex Police, he went and worked at the CCRC, head of investigation at the CCRC. Very important role at the CCRC. Barrington is there when the original application goes in from Michael Steele. A very, very strong application goes in. And as a result of which, there is an investigation by Hertfordshire Police, a Section 19 inquiry by Hertfordshire Police on behalf of the Court of Appeal called Operation Obtain. We have spoken to them. And they made it very clear that the CCRC tried to give a very narrow focus for their investigation, which is around whether or not Darren Nichols did or did not have a media, have the news and media, and was he being paid at the time by them prior to trial, which would obviously impact on the trial. Quite clear to us he was. They found quite the opposite. But what's important is that in their investigation they also uncovered other evidence, including the most damning evidence ever that Darren Nichols told lies, which was that Darren Nichols was in prison in the Supergrass wing with a number of other people. One of those people was a man called Cousins. It's in the public domain now, so I don't think there's a problem in mentioning his name. He was a very intelligent man. He was there as a protected witness giving evidence in another major trial. They call him the Professor, so he's a very intelligent bloke. He was keeping a daily record, a daily diary of what was being said and what was going on. So he's got an exact record of everything that was being said on a day-to-day basis, and he was talking to Darren Nichols. He was a confidant of Darren Nichols. Darren Nichols was telling him that he was going to tell lies in court and that he was being coached by police. And the Professor was recording it, okay, on a diary. He transferred that diary to a computer when he got a computer, and so everything is there in real detail. He thought there was other evidence that supported and corroborated the allegations against Michael Steele and Jack Williams. It wasn't until he came out of prison that he found out that actually the only evidence that convicted Steele and Williams was Darren Nichols' evidence. Operation Obtain interviewed him, took witness statements off him for the CCRC, and they also took witness statements of another 4 protected witnesses, all of whom said that Darren Nichols told them he was going to tell lies in court. So you've got 5 people, right, who are within a Supergrass wing, they're protected witnesses, all saying Darren Nichols was going to tell lies and was being coached by police. Those 5 people go on to give evidence in other major criminal cases as witnesses of truth, and their evidence is accepted. The CCRC refused to accept their evidence. So you've got 5 people saying Darren Nichols was going to tell lies, and the CCRC said, we're not interested. Now, we don't know whether Mr. Barrington had any influence over it or not, or just the mere fact that he was head of investigations had any influence over it. What we do know is he had to give evidence, and he has witness statements as part of the Operation Obtain case. And you've got to go back to, where does Barrington fit into all this? Barrington authorised Darren Nichols to become an informant. Barrington authorised the payment of the money that he knew Darren Nichols had dumped his own drugs in the ARC pits. Barrington is the officer who goes down the cell passageway and into the cell in the third interview, not on tape, no solicitor present, when Darren Nichols suddenly, mysteriously, rolls over and admits the murders and doesn't have a solicitor afterwards. So Barrington's involved in Century, setting up Century, and he's involved in all of the other investigations, corruption inquiries. He's the head of CID, basically, Operation Apache the lot. So Mr. Barrington has got skin in the game, and there he is at the CCRC all the years later, when the Court of Appeal, or the application is made to the Court of Appeal for the, for Steel and Worms.
It's never going to change if he's heading it, is it?
And yet, and this is our concern is, well, the evidence that was presented on that occasion at the Court of Appeal, I think it was 2012, was it?
Wow.
2012, was substantial. You had David Bristow, the man, the UK's leading expert on cell sites, saying there is no way that those telephone calls from Jack Williams took place in that lane. David Bristow saying that it's more likely, highly likely, which is the expert way of saying categorically, that Michael Steele was not where Nichols says he was at 6:30 on the evening. So you've got lots and lots of material going to the CCRC that you would have thought would have led to a wrongful conviction.
Yes, but definitely need someone that's not connected to that case
exactly
in any way, shape or form.
Exactly. So there are concerns about CCRC.
I'll move on to the next question. Can you give me a summary of any new evidence that you've uncovered?
I'll do that one by one, David.
Yeah, I'll start with the first one.
Yeah.
We have a new witness, and I'm not going to go into any details because that person's life would undoubtedly be in danger, and it's difficult to go into the detail of what that person is saying, other than to say we can put Jesse Gale outside the wine bar, Mortimer's, as Billy Jasper describes on the evening of the murders, or in the early hours of the morning of the murders, and we can say that Billy Gale, Jesse Gale, involvement in this is likely as described by Billy Jasper, to the point that admissions were made about the murders. So Jasper's got his version of events. Gale died in 97.
October 97.
97.
The start of the trial.
And it would appear from the new evidence, which would have to be tested in court, it would appear that Billy Gale had an involvement in the murders, and it corroborates again Billy Jasper's account of what happened. I think that's about the best I can say, really.
Yeah, I think we can go slightly further and just say that the admissions made by this person to us, I'll be very careful, that they were asked to do things that fit in with what you would expect to happen after a murder. Yeah, so I'll say no more than that. So I've listened. David's spoken to this witness. I've listened to the conversation, and I'll tell you what, that needs to go straight to the Court of Appeal and let the people in authority make a decision. And that's our frustration, that it seems to be taking ages for anybody to listen. I've spent 4 years on this because we wanted to do it. It's because my heart tells me that an injustice has been done, and two guys have been locked away for half their life. Next one.
It looks to me like obviously so much is coming out on social media now with all like the evidence and stuff. If they don't take it seriously, it's going to give people a real sort of not have a trust or belief in going through the justice system.
Yeah.
it's going to have a real knock-on effect, I think. So it really needs to be looked at.
We're not the only ones saying that the CCRC are not fit for purpose.
No. Everybody who we've had dealings with, we've got a number of cases ongoing before the CCRC. Just about everybody is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not fit for purpose. That's the reality. But you're right. The problem with this is when all this comes out, and it will come out one day. When it comes out, it's so bad that we discussed it. Some of it is just appalling, and the impact on policing, is going to be appalling, dreadful.
Yeah. I think as well, like from for you guys, former police having trouble dealing with the CCRC. What chance does that give like families that are not as experienced as you guys are dealing with that sort of stuff? They got no hope, have they?
No, you unfortunately, it's not. The problem is once you're convicted, once you've gone through an appeal process, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. As Malkinson is the most recent case, 19 years in prison for the rape he didn't commit.
Yeah.
But you go back over the years, there's been a series of miscarriage of justice cases. The state don't want it because it undermines not just policing, it undermines the entire justice system. But there's right and wrong.
The next one, because there's quite a few. A new witness states that she saw Craig Rolfe outside the Captain's Arms public house on the 6th, which gives supporting evidence that Stuart Armstrong gave at trial, where he was asked a simple question: was it the Tuesday or was it the Wednesday? And he said he'd favoured the Wednesday. If this other witness had been there as well and given evidence, then that would have been two saying it was recognised Craig Rolfe with someone else outside the public house on his mobile phone, and that is a new piece of evidence which has gone to the CCRC. David, I think you can do the next one.
We've got
Claire.
We spoke to Claire Carey a long while ago actually, but she saw Tate get into the Range Rover and leave that evening, and it's clear she made phone calls as well to Tate's phone. She expected to go out with him that evening. The reality is that, and this is another big issue, is according to Essex Police, the last phone call was the phone call to Sarah Saunders, the 1844 to 47, 3 minutes 47 seconds, and they say that's the last phone call, and they time limited the telephone data they put before the courts to 1844 to that phone call. What's important around that is that is version 2. There was an earlier version of Pat Tate's call data which was recorded in December, version 1, which has never ever been disclosed, and they refuse to disclose it. Now, why we think that's important is because we know there were phone calls to Pat Tate on his phone. So they time limited it at 1844. Why? Why did they time limit it? Because there's other calls. Because potentially Pat Tate's phone was being used after 1844, after 1859. Obviously you've got that period when they were murdered, allegedly, between 1848 and 1859, 11-minute window. That's when they say they were murdered. We think there's call data, probably cell site, on Pat Tate's phone, which would show that Pat Tate was not dead at 1859. So that's really important, and Claire Carey would have had that conversation, would have been calling Tate to try and have a conversation. Where are you? What's going on?
And what supports Claire's evidence is there was a big concern there was no keys in Pat Tate's pocket in relation to how did he get, to get back into 49 Gordon Road where he lived. And clearly he'd left the keys indoors and left the side door open for Claire to get in. She wasn't sitting outside in the freezing cold for 2 hours. She was inside, probably had a bath. I think she did, because the bath was run for her. And she'd used her mobile phone to find out where Pat Tate was, because he'd gone past the 8 o'clock time that they were supposed to be picked up to go out. And also the timing helps, because it was 1806 that Pat Tate has called her mum to say, tell Claire when she's happy with me, if she gets in touch, that I've had to pop out, I'll be back in half an hour. So, you know, that's a very small piece of evidence, but new evidence that gives support to the timeline, because the next sighting we know is Andrew Reynolds, but I won't waste time on that now. I think the next one, David, you can talk about Brian Rolfe.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Rolfe, Brian Richardson came forward, wrote a book. The reality is that he says Donna Jaggers has told lies about her involvement in all this. I've already covered the bit about the machine gun. He says that she lied about that. He says she lied about the murder of Kevin Whitaker. He says that she was present when Kevin Whitaker was killed. And clearly she was never dealt with in relation to the murder of Whitaker. Whitaker was always dealt with as effectively a sudden death, you know, a drug overdose. Wasn't, he was murdered. Essex police had covered that up. Clearly the story about the machine gun was a complete blatant lie. So he deals with Donna Jaggers' evidence and undermines it, discredits it. Also, he talks about seeing Craig the night before, meeting Craig outside, I think it was his mum's house, in the Range Rover, and he said Craig had 2 kilos of cocaine and a handgun in the Range Rover that night, the night before. So Craig already had 2 kilos, possibly more, and a handgun. So it adds weight to the Jasper account that there was a deal for 4 kilos of coke. The big question is, why did they go to that lane and they had no guns? Why weren't they armed when they went there? You know, that's a big question. Or were the guns taken off them at the scene?
We've spoken to a new witness who's given information that he heard gunshots in the region of the old Windmill pub in South Hanningfield Road, and he dialed 999. So our appeal reminder now is that we're keen for the officer who did take this 999 call, if it happened, to come forward and let us know what it was all about. The witness says the officer did arrive, he went away and came back and said that to his view it wasn't shot. He with me made a mistake, it was farmers or whatever, but still keen. And this could also support the evidence of Stephen Rogers, the farmer, who also heard he says a fuselage of shots in the general area of where he lived, which is South Hanningfield Road. And finally, David?
There's a witness. He's not a new witness, but there's a witness who was parked up in a lorry at the end of Workhouse Lane at the time that they were allegedly murdered, according to Nichols and Essex police. He heard no shots at all at that time, and you would have expected him to have heard shots, at the time of the murders. The other important point that we've made is that we spoke to the farmer. You spoke to the farmer, and importantly, at the time of the alleged murders, according to Darren Nichols and Essex Police, 1848, 1859, he was outside in the egg shed, as he calls it, his egg shed, with his son Peter, and Peter did make a witness statement, but was never asked did he hear whether there were shots at that time. He would have heard the shots. Undoubtedly, he was like hundreds of yards away. It's his land. If he heard a series of shots at that time, he would have investigated. He never heard any shots, and he's literally on his land, a couple of hundred yards away. There were no shots at that time. There were no fusillade of shots between 1848 and 1859 because they never took place then. They took place after midnight.
Yeah. And I think finally that we've already touched on it, David, that you've talked about the witness in the witness protection programme who said that Nichols was going to tell lies. Well, that's gone nowhere.
Yeah.
I use the expression, it appears to be brushed under the carpet, but also that during the Sky documentary we actually filmed a witness who said he saw them at the turnpike. We know that came about through the defence case, but that witness is adamant. You've spoken to him. CCRC won't give him the statements that they took from him, and that needs to be tested in the right place, which is a court of appeal.
Yeah.
If he says he saw the Range Rover, and he had a road rage incident with them. CCRC response is they have put excuses in the way as to why it couldn't have happened. They never went to the crime scene. They got north and south wrong, and the only way you could pick up and understand what that witness is saying is to be there. We've both been to the turnpike, we've both been to the crime scene, and the witness has been there. So we're comfortable that that witness's evidence has not been tested, and it should be tested in the Court of Appeal.
And it's not one witness. He's in the car with 3 people.
Yeah.
And we've spoken to 2 of the people in that car, both of whom say categorically we had an incident with a Range Rover with 3 big, large men who they say, they identified as Tucker, Tate and Rolfe on that evening after 11 o'clock at night, he said. And we literally pulled alongside, he said, because he was going to have a row with them. He looked across and he said, monsters of men. And he saw the front seat passenger, and what was really interesting was when I was filming with Sky, he literally remembered it. When you're at a scene somewhere, we're standing at the turnpike. He said, he said, Dave, he said, I remember there was red round his, I can remember it now. He said, I remember red round his. I said, no, there's no red. When we went back and looked at the post-mortem photographs, there it is. The inside of Tucker's jacket has got a red lining and it's turned over. So he had remembered that 6 years later, being at the scene, he's remembered it. And you don't make things like that up. And he is absolutely adamant, as are the others, that they had a road rage incident with Tucker, Tate and Rolfe in that Range Rover, and he says he remembers the 2 4s in the index number. Yeah. He said, the evidence is, that alone should have undermined the prosecution case. The CCRC did not put it before the Court of Appeal.
There's so much now to sort of...
Finished yet?
Yeah, I know. There's so much though, when it's only the word of Darren Nichols that's convicted of.
Compared to the word of Darren Nichols, a man who five witnesses all wrote witness statements saying was going to lie and was being coached by police, and the timeline doesn't fit that we've done, the telephone evidence doesn't fit. You just couldn't make up the mass of evidence that says that Michael Steele and Jack Womes did not kill these people. And it's worse than that, because what you've got on the other side is, it's not a case where you can turn around and say, well, there's doubt about their conviction. There is doubt, massive doubt about their conviction. But what you've also got is you've got the evidence of Billy Jasper, who says, well, actually, I was involved in it. I was there. And these are the people who actually committed it. Plus we've got witnesses who then corroborate that. So you've not only got the fact that all of Nichols' evidence has been undermined, you've got the true story over here. Now we're not saying Billy Jasper is telling the entire truth. I doubt he would be, because he'd be banged up for 20 whatever years for murder. But he definitely, that is closer to the truth of what really went on in Rettendon on the 7th of December 1995.
I'm also a realist on that point. In relation to Billy Jasper, Billy Jasper could be talking a lot of crap, excuse my French. It's what Essex Police did not do in relation to his admissions yet to DS Sanford, whatever his name was, and someone else. Over 3 days, he should have been taken away and debriefed, and he should actions raised, and basic things like CCTV, the mobile phone, the phones that they had, check corroboration from forensic. Was there any shoe marks at the crime scene that fitted what he was saying? All those things that they just did not do. They just wrote it off without any due diligence, without any investigation. But on the other side, his account is a damn sight more plausible than the Nichols account. And when you look at the other things he said, nothing to do with Rettendon, he's more likely to be telling the truth. You've spoken to him, David. He wants to put this all behind, because he's been, for want of a better word, dropped on from a high height and spent just as long in prison as Steele and Williams.
And I think the other point, just to very quickly make there, is if Essex Police had just picked up the phone and phoned the Met at that time, if you'd have picked up the phone and phoned anyone in the Met, you would have seen fireworks go off. Because if you just look at who Billy Jasper was talking about, if you just take Patsy Clark at that time, the biggest investigation in Met Police history, in the history of policing, into the Brinks Mac job, Patsy Clark was one of their targets. You would have had people from the Brinks Mac job come in to sit down with Essex Police immediately. The other people he was talking about were under investigation, not just by SIS, Regional Crime Squad, Flying Squad, for murders and organised crime. They're under investigation by the CIB3, the Untouchables, the Anti-Corruption Command, for corrupting police officers. Nobody from Essex picks up the phone and speaks to the Met because, and the big one is, of course, Billy Jasper himself was an informant, a trusted informant for the Met. Now, if they'd have just phoned up and given his name to SO10, his informant handler, Rowley Baker, would have come down and sat down and told them the truth about Billy Jasper.
Which, again, if he was an informant, that sort of pretty much tells you that he was giving the right information, doesn't it?
He would listen. I worked on some of his work. I didn't know I worked on his work, but having now spoken to Rowley Baker, I'd actually worked on some of the jobs that he had put up. Gerard Chewett, the IRA quartermaster who escaped from prison, Moody, who got shot dead subsequently. We worked on all those jobs. He was putting up the top level information. So, you can't just discount what he had to say.